Welcome to the skating session. My name is Tony Wheeler.
And I'm Thomas Vu.
And since this is technically an off week, there are competitions happening this week. But as far as the Grand Prix goes, we thought we would make a video based on some of the questions that we get pretty often. I posted a little message on YouTube asking if anyone had specific questions they wanted us to go over, please include them. And we would just make this video to do like a session basically of question and answer. Um, Grand Prix Final is next week, so we'll be back to that normal kind of scheduling, but this is an off week, so I thought this would be fun. I wanted to start, I'm going to go on a long tangent probably to start this whole thing,
Please
but
do.
so our video that we made last week, that was like the SOS ice dance, it's in trouble. We did it after the rhythm dance at Finlandia because of the low calls and some of the questionable calls that we thought, having gone through the rule book. The ISU has responded to, in general, that there's an inquiry into the judging there, into the calling and the judging. We don't know how serious that is. I mean, Sean Rettstad is the head of the Ice Dance Technical Committee,
Right.
so what are they really going to do except say he was doing his job as far as he knew within his capabilities of this camera for review or whatever they want to use, but I'm sure it's just going to result in it was kind of equally applied across the entire field, more or less, and it is what it is. So I don't think we're going to get anything out of that. How about you?
No, it it screams to me as one of those who will police the police situations.
Yeah,
So it's yeah, I don't have a lot of faith that anything will come of that. And if anything does come of it, that they even bother publishing anything about it.
yeah,
And maybe
yeah,
one of those unsaid things. Right.
yeah, yeah. And then moving on to I had mentioned, and this has blown up into something much bigger, and I should have known it would, but this whole Papergate of Sean handing a detailed paper of notes on all of the elements for Madison and Evan at Skate America. He handed it to Patrice Lauzon, and the rules were actually there was a little bit of a debate online in one of the forums whether like if this is a big deal or not, and absolutely I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And the rules were actually found, and this is the exact rule. An ISU official assigned to an ISU event, the Olympic Winter Games, the Winter Youth Olympic Games, or Challenger Series competition may not provide monitoring or feedback to a skater who is competing at the same competition during the 60 days before the date of the competition's first official practice. So, Sean should be well aware of this, even if he thought, this is like a hee hee, I'm going to hand you a piece of paper and nod and then walk away and all is good. But you have fans that are watching everything, and you better believe if I would have been on that side of the rink, I would have seen it too and probably pulled my camera out so fast. Because if this was on
Right.
video, I guarantee this would be a huge scandal. I guarantee this would be something. And then they would probably argue the paper was not this or that. But yeah, come on. Like the person that
Right.
was sitting in the second row right behind them saw what it was, and that is that. That's all I can say about it. I've never, in the many, many years I've been online, I've never been known to throw out kind of false accusations. And unless I'm very sure of the source, I never really say
Yeah.
anything. So,
And it'd be like the foot tapping scandal all over again because
yeah,
you actually
yeah,
have video proof of it. And
yeah,
what's
yeah,
so funny is these days, if they catch you videoing the officials during the
yeah,
competition,
yeah,
they would threaten to kick you out.
right.
So it's not that like they truly are creating rules to stop this. They're actually creating rules to stop people being caught. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Obviously though, within 60 days before the start of the first official practice, and he was doing this after in the first day of the official
Right.
practice, like it just
Day
blows
zero.
my mind.
Right.
It blows my mind. It really just it was not right. I don't know how many other teams, if any other teams he does this for, but it was very kind of gutsy, I think, to do it right out there in the open. Like I said in the first day, the first time I mentioned this, that side of the rink technically was closed off. They said, do not sit there for practices. It all needs to be on the side opposite the judges. And then people, of course, went over there because no one cares once everything starts.
Right.
So yeah, that's what it is. If it's going to be addressed, I don't know. I kind of put in some feelers to see if they're going to talk about that. I don't expect a reply. I do have history with the ISU, as I've mentioned. I got a judge actually suspended. I helped get a judge suspended in the past, and I also corrected the ISU when they allowed the incorrect amount of pairs teams from China to go to Junior Worlds, and they corrected that result by voiding the result of the lowest placed team and making putting out this communication that because of a mishap or some whatever they sent the wrong amount. I don't know. Anyways, the ISU probably by now is sick of me, but I think something needs to be done to address whatever was going on there, and that's all I can say. But without video
And you
proof, it's
know,
going to be like, nah, you're wrong.
well, and here's the thing about that. Your expectation is only that the ISU understands its own rules and regulations.
Yeah,
That's it. It's
yeah,
a to me a very small ask. And I
yeah.
think whenever you have a large organization like this that clearly has long-running people in it, like they seem to have a resistance to this, and the very knowledge of this organization's own rules and processes just somehow get lost.
Yeah.
And they clearly are doing what they want in some cases. So
They just don't. I think they don't put in the work to check anything, and
no,
it's
right,
even we're going out of ice dance, but pairs. I think I'm the only person as far as online circles that was able to see in real time that that lift was not a correct lift and shouldn't have gotten done. These are the kind of things I'm talking about, though. These people are professionally, they are trained pretty adequately to make sure that they're competent in doing their job. And like time and time again, I just feel like they're not.
right.
And
And there was never a follow-up to that either, right? So
no,
even that to me is one of the
no,
biggest issues
no,
that literally has happened on this Grand Prix.
yeah,
Sway and Hotch should not have had that bronze medal at that competition, yet
yeah.
no response.
Yeah, I mean, they're not
Yeah,
going to take away their bronze medal, but I mean, at least an acknowledgement of like, hey, like we dropped the ball there. I mean, I
right.
remember a few years ago, Brady Tennell did like a triple H triple toe at Skate America, and they called it a double toe, and they never went back and fixed it. It wouldn't have changed the results, but it's like just stuff like that. Like, come on. I don't know. I don't know. All right, let's move on from that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've read that there was a little bit of backlash over the way Zingis and Kolesnik were scored, and I want to make it very clear. This is do not take it out on the skaters. We're
Right.
adults sitting on the internet and you want to be a keyboard warrior. Do not take it out on the skaters. It is not their fault for the way they're scored. It's not their fault for the way that the judges or the technical panel do or don't do their jobs. We have always focused more so on the application of the rules as they're written and whether they're applied equally or not. Yes, we feel like Kolesnik got away with a little bit of a gift in the rhythm dance with his twizzles, comparatively speaking to other teams, but it wasn't like they were
Right.
showered with like level 3 and level 4 elements when everyone else was getting screwed by the judges. It didn't happen like that. So I
And
want
it
to
wouldn't have made a
actually,
difference in the
yeah,
results either.
yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have. I mean, they were going to go to the Grand Prix final regardless. I mean, they were comfortably into that sixth spot. They had the same total points as Lajoie and Laga of Canada, but their total overall event score, which is the tiebreaker, was like 9 points higher or something. So it wasn't even a
Yeah.
contest there. I think they've come into the season looking really good. Now, I mean, is there connections, maybe some like roundabout things that Retstat is involved with them in some way? Yeah, probably. I've read that he is, but I don't think that the scoring was so egregious that you have to say like there was a scandal there. Now, to that note, I want to call out anything GOEs or goes or however they refer to themselves. They It was referenced that in one of their videos, they basically said since this team has only been together for 4 years or 3 years, however long they've been together, they should not be getting the scores to get into the Grand Prix final, essentially. And I think they were really pushing for Marjorie and Zach being like on the losing end of this, but Marjorie and Zach had a massive, massive mistake in their first Grand Prix event, which is really what took them out of contention. I
Right.
mean,
And
the
on the choreographic rhythm step,
which was
which
an obvious mistake. This is not a
right.
questionable like, oh, I could see how like they were just being nasty to them. No, this was a big mistake.
And it's the highest GOE spread element in ice dance too
Yeah,
that they messed
yeah,
up on. So that's
yeah,
kind of on them.
yeah,
Like I'll put that out there too. Like
yeah.
I think Zingas and Kolesnik deserve to go to the Grand Prix final
Me
for all
too.
the reasons you mentioned. And I don't think time together as a team matters either because Cizeron and Fonio Baudry have been together for a year, right? Like
Yeah,
they've been practicing probably less than a year.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's another thing. I just to go back to this. Fournier, Baudry, Cizeron in their first event when we did this Grand Prix France recap, there were people in the comments that were saying people that have been together only this amount of time for their first competition, they're not allowed to get PCS that good. They have to wait they have to wait. There's no way that they should be getting the scores this high. That is not how the system works.
Right.
You're playing into this whole nonsense of the system if you say things like that. You need to score what is on the ice. In my opinion, Cizeron and
I
Fournier
agree.
Baudry have stepped into an amazing, amazing spot. They look like they've been skating together for years. I think Zingis and Klesnik, especially this year, are so improved. I think that you cannot look at things as like waiting your turn. As unfortunate as it is that it seems like some teams are having to do that, it shouldn't be like that.
And,
Those
and,
that
and
kind of
let's all
idea.
remember back when it was wait your turn, it sucked. It was terrible watching these competitions when the programs or what happened on the ice didn't matter unless someone
Yeah.
made a massive
Well,
fall.
yeah,
And
and
then
even
even
when they
then,
did,
sometimes it didn't matter.
even when they did,
Right.
yeah. In
Yeah.
6.0, you
Hmm.
could fall in your program and still get the same placement or like drop maybe
Hmm.
one placement. There was, look at some of the results from the 6.0 years between CD1, CD2, the OD, and the free dance. Sometimes there was not one movement all the way down the field. So
Right.
you'd see 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 16, 16, 16, 16. Like no one ever moved regardless of what the skating was. So now you're seeing a little bit of shift and a little bit of this excitement and the unpredictability of ice dance this year, and people are seemingly not happy with that either. So it's like you can't win either way, but if they're attempting to do the right thing and let teams move up adequately, then you should let it. Um,
I agree.
also to this, hi Beverly Smith, we know that you watch us because she wrote an article. She wrote an
Yeah.
article that basically referenced a lot of what I said and what you said, and what the kicker really was is this just brief mentioning of Robin Cousins and what he said about the choreographic elements. And I had gone into detail about what he said previously in an older video, but in the video for Finlandia, I just briefly mentioned it, and it's almost like an exact quote of what I said in her article. And it's like she picked pieces out of what we said and just kind of told Chat GPT like, "Hey, make an entire article with like very minimal details, but try to fit all this stuff into 1,000 words or less." Like that's literally what it feels like. But I will say the big issue that I have out of what is coming out of all of this scandal from Finlandia and even from Skate America is I feel like journalists now and even skaters are going to lobby to angle it in a way that only benefits them or their federation. Like Beverly Smith's article was very heavy on how Piper and Paul were really the only ones that suffered from this whole thing, which I don't feel to be the case.
Right.
Again, you can argue like the Kolesnik Twizzles were overlooked and then Piper and Paul got hit really hard, but we even reviewed that specific element because we were a little bit confused about it as well. And then we figured out, okay, base level maybe slightly harsh, but really not that out of the ordinary because we got to at least a level one as a maximum. So that is what it is there. But I will say, Guillaume said something in the last few days as well. I saw a quote from him
Oh.
where he's basically angling it, I feel like, and this is coming from someone who really, really enjoys their programs, especially their free dance, and I think they look great, but he's angling it to where essentially it sounds like if he loses, it's going to be the result of some kind of conspiracy. Now, I feel like every single team going into the Olympics that is a medal contender or a top favorite is going to say, oh, well, we were just screwed by the judges if it doesn't work out how it should. And it might very well be that way, but I just don't like how it's the positioning now off of all of this where
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to see a lot more of that heading into the Olympics and
Setting up the
however the
victim
Grand Prix final.
narrative.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
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 Mhm.
So okay, moving on to even more stuff. So in the last week, I know we put up our Instagram, our personal accounts, a few weeks ago, and I know that you've been getting a ton of friend requests and you've been getting messages, and I've been getting messages from skaters and from journalists and from coaches and from former skaters.
Yeah.
And I want to mention specifically one of the ice dancers who actually competed in the Grand Prix messaged me. They basically got lost in all our videos, watched the Grand Prix recaps because they wanted to understand a few things happening in ice dance judging. I loved your analysis. Keep doing what you're doing. Your work is great. So then I followed up and I said, can you just give me like a few comments about what the general feeling is between all of you after the competitions, especially in these last two events, when you've talked to other skaters that have been on the Grand Prix? What is the feeling? What's going on? And they replied, from our point of view, some of the choreographic elements make the technical scoring feel like a bit too subjective. Deductions like an exclamation point attention, as they call it, can remove several points and leave the element and our overall technical score at a disadvantage, and that does not feel proportional. Regarding the rhythm dance, we feel that ballroom styles offered a cleaner structure for the technical panel and made the scoring less subjective than judging something based on interpretation in the choreo step. And what have we said? I know
Right.
again, we've only had this since Worlds, but if you follow our posts on skating forums, social media, it's been a lot of this for a long time, how the choreographic elements have really been the make or break elements of the program, and it's nonsensical to me because
Mhm.
it's like you're judging the choreography that's already included in the PCS mark. So it's like, what is this? I think when
Right.
you
It's insane. Yeah, the number too. And it's basically like if you add up all the choreographic element GOEs, you can get up to 20 points.
right,
It's an insane amount of
but that's
points.
where it's made or
And
broken
that's why
because
it's make or break and everything's so
everyone gets
subjective
level
and
four
it's not based on
twizzles.
anything
Yeah.
technical. Yeah.
when you have all the same, what ends up happening is almost all the elements more or less we saw now, like these base level, these level one, maybe occasional level two on some of these individual step sequences and these patterns that people have to do. It really comes down to how they're going to throw out the GOEs for the choreographic elements. Really, that is what skating in ice dance is determined by these days. And we also have talked about, and I'll reference Guillaume and Laurence um, in Finland again. Their element that wasn't even the right element would have gotten +5 from some judges, even though they had no content in that element. It is such a throwaway nonsense element. Get rid of the choreographic elements, leave the choreography to the PCS, find a way to include something else that's like a variety of movement that really can differentiate the teams. Because I'm telling you, going down the ice and doing this and getting a +5 is making or breaking the results, and it's crazy. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And that's what the skater basically said as well. So I was very happy to see that. I know that there's other skaters having been at Skate America that have referenced things that we've said in the video. So I feel like target achieved, I guess. But I'm glad that people are listening and actually agreeing with what we're saying, and we're not just saying crazy things. Because for a long time before we had this YouTube, I feel like some of the stuff that I was saying I wasn't really agreed with that much. It was
I
like
don't know. You're having your Mugatu moment from Zoolander. Am I taking
the
crazy pills?
yes, they would be like, the judges know what they're talking about more than you do. Okay, well, I don't know. Now this year you're all
Ooh.
complaining about the judging, so let's see. Okay, so that's it for my rants.
Yeah.
We're gonna go into some of the questions we got specifically. We're gonna try to answer as many of them as we can. Some of them really need like an 8-hour video just to
Yeah.
explain what people want to know. But the common denominator between a lot of the questions and what we're going to talk about is you have to you and unless you really 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 understand ice dancing already, you have to go back and you have to know the foundations of the edges. You have to know what a three turn is. You have to know what a counter is. You have to know what a rocker
Yeah.
is. You have to know what a bracket is. You have to know what these things are, or trying to say whether an element like the 1 foot step or the pattern is judged adequately or not. You can't know. And even for us, it's a little bit hard because the camera angles are not always consistent. And I'm not saying in real time it's always that easy to pick up on some of the like, oh, was the edge deep enough or all of that stuff. But unless you really know, like a three turn is one of the very first things you learn in skating. And then you just kind of expand from those simple
Yeah.
movements, and you need to know what they are. Like most people know what a twizzle is, yes, but there's other movements that need to be included in some of these elements in order to achieve an ideal level 4. And unless you know what they are, you're never going to get anywhere. So it's hitting those foundations of skating really hard. I will link. I was clicking around the internet trying to find like, should we make a diagram? No, it would be too much. So I found actually someone that goes into detail with all of them, and I'll link to all of them. But I would say study those and just really, really know what you're looking for, and then it's going to make a lot more sense when we say skaters have not so good, basics. When we say stuff like that, it's just they're kind of clumsy on holding these edges and the depth of the edges and the way they move around and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I would say you need to know. You need to know what it is. Um,
And there are some basic things to think like that can help you, especially if you're somebody who thinks spatially, geometrically, it can really help. And I always just think to yourself, like think about a clock, think about a circle. You can go
yeah,
counterclockwise,
yeah.
clockwise. Starting with that really helps. And we'll get more into it when we
Yeah.
get to the specific
Yeah.
questions, but
Yeah.
just keep thinking about that.
Yeah. So I was a weird one, and as soon as IPS was, well, it was called COP back then, but I
Yeah.
was I was 16 when over the summer, and I think it was 2000. Yeah, it had to be 2003. They released all of these files that were like very detailed notes on how this judging system was going to work. And that was the first time. I mean, before that, I think ice dance was just like throw out whatever score you want, more or less, include
Yeah.
X amount of lifts in the program, like who cares? But now they had a really set formula for how things were going to be scored. So I downloaded all of those files, I printed all of them, and I read them. And immediately I wanted to know, this is how the foundations of skating are. And now it's been easy to keep up with because every year, more or less, there's just a few changes. But those foundations that I learned over 20 years ago has really helped me just to see things right away. And when I'm watching, I can call in real time a lot of the time. I'm like, no, this will be this or this will be this. Ice dance again, like the 1 foot step is like notorious. It's so hard. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, everything looked super clean to me and everything looked effortless. And then it's like level one on the screen. So that's one thing I don't think I'm
I
ever going
know.
to, I can guess, but I'm usually not right. Okay.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts before we go into these questions?
No, that's just it. It's just like, Code of Points has been around for a long time, just a bit of a background. It pretty much came about because of the 2002 Paris scandal. It kind of accelerated that idea that was already in discussion in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ISU. And then the first season where it was implemented was the 2023-24 Grand Prix season. Sorry,
Oh,
2003,
304. Yeah,
2004. I
yeah,
keep saying 20.
yeah,
Oh, 304 Grand Prix
yeah,
season. Yeah.
yeah,
And then officially full season the next year.
yeah.
Yeah.
There were
Mhm.
a few. There were a
It's been a
few
while, over
events
20 years
in.
now.
Yeah, in 2003. I remember they did it at, like Nebelhorn, and I want to say Jennifer Dawn won for the United States, and it was like the
Yeah,
skater that
yeah,
nobody
yeah.
knew. So
Hmm.
everyone was like,
And
"Oh
didn't she
my
have
God,
only up to a sock cow too?
Dalkow." Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Hmm.
But the thing was, everybody was so excited because they were like, all these skate like the results are going to change completely. Like all these skaters we've never heard of are suddenly going to be like the top skaters. It didn't end up happening like that, but I
I mean,
remember after
there were
that
some
first event,
cases.
yeah,
Yeah. There were
yeah,
some like random cases where, especially like before, you could never climb up from being like really down on the rankings, and now you
yeah.
can, right? Because
Oh yeah,
everything's based on
absolutely.
points.
Yeah,
Like Kevin
yeah,
Vanderparen, I think, did that at Skate Canada, and you had Laura Lapisto winning a
yeah.
world medal without
So
a
Kev,
Lutz or
well,
flip, right?
yeah. Well, Kevin at 2003 Skate Canada was like 10th or 11th in the short program. I remember he didn't have a triple axel, but he did a triple sol, triple toe, triple loop in the free skate. He ended up having to like use all these jumping blocks with double axles because there was nothing else. He could have actually thrown in another double axle, a third one. He ended up doing that at the competition after Trophy La Ligue. But he went, yeah, so he went from like last or near last to third in the free skate to like fifth overall. Um, so stuff like that did not happen. You know, if typically if you would be buried in the standings after like a one program in 6.0, you would kind of stay there more or less, regardless of how you skated. But
Yeah.
that definitely gave movement and also let, to go from seventh to first, which I think, Lambiel did it and Sandu did it at Grand Prix events. That would never happen either because it would be like you would need the factored placements to work out in your favor. You need the first, second, and third place skaters to like finish enough behind you that you were going to be able to win. But now, like all those open the door for new things. We could
Yeah.
talk about the beginning of
Basically,
ITS
like
forever.
code of points, ISU judging system, the margin in which you place above your competitors matters now. When before it really
Yeah,
didn't. Just the
yeah,
placements mattered. Yeah.
yeah. A really funny story. Just so
Okay.
when I was at Skate America, I was talking to one of the coaches, and they were saying, "Oh, like how much of the history do you know?" Blah blah blah, and they were mentioning some Italian skaters, and they said, "Oh yeah, Tony is Sabrina Bombardieri." I'm like, "Yeah, I know who she was. You know, she was like 27th at the Olympics in '98." Pulls out Wikipedia, 27th at the Olympics in 1998. This person was like, "Oh my God." But I don't know. I look at these things and I just remember them, and especially if I've
Yeah.
the late 90s, early 2000s is just it for me. I just remember all that stuff so well. Okay, let's get into the questions that we have. The first question is from Lauren Freeman. Just to get some clarity on the USFS Olympic selection process, you want to start talking a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I think that's something that's kind of missed by even like a lot of casual fans or even like longer term fans is that they're so used to nationals being something like the Olympic qualifier. I think the networks have finally stopped calling it that, but nationals more or less is not an Olympic qualifying event. It's just one of the events that they use to decide who's on the Olympic team. The concept now is called body of work, and now more or less how many years they go back for this body of work changes every Olympic cycle. I
Hmm.
believe this year it's just considering this season,
Hmm.
right? Officially. And so
To
for the
an
most part,
extent, because
yeah.
the Shibutanis are getting points for having gone to the Olympics, I think, in the
Okay,
past.
previously. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think so.
see,
There's
and
like
again,
a
the
yeah,
USFS decides what the criteria
yeah,
is
yeah,
every
yeah.
time, right? So yeah. And so by the time nationals comes around, you more or less know most of the Olympic team, but it's based on who's scored really well. And if you look at like the last Olympics, there were skaters who basically didn't go to nationals and still got named the Olympic team or had to
Hmm.
withdraw
Yeah,
for certain reasons. Like Alyssa Liu did not compete at the last nationals,
yeah.
still named to the Olympic team.
Hmm.
Right. And so there's actually a set criteria. And then Tony, if you want to give them a shout out here,
Yeah, so
skating scores. Yeah.
Skating Scores, yeah, has put together this beta version of it's a really nice, easy to read kind of Excel chart that's put into formatted all nice, and it shows the current points that each skater will get in each discipline and what it's going to look like coming into nationals. I'll link to that. That'll be one of the things that I include in the comments for the video. But it shows where everyone stands. I think that in some of these cases they're just so close. It really is going to come down to nationals, especially the men. I think it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of wide open there. I think pairs can also make an argument for that. The women, like we've said since the beginning of the season, the top three are pretty much set. I think even if there's a disaster at nationals, I think that the three are set. Dance, how you have this like we think the top two are probably set if you include Zingis Kolesnik, but the third spot could get interesting. If the Shibutanis, if this is correct that they're getting points for their Olympic appearance, then they kind of are in the picture too because of the points they got there. I looked at the chart I think yesterday, and they're up there. So, but yeah, essentially it's always been like in the past, I remember even they call it like Olympic qualifying, and Terry Gannon was always like, if you finish in the top three, blah blah blah. But no, it's more or less. I think even then it was like the winner goes, and then it's kind of up to the USFS to decide what they want to
Yeah.
do. But you look in like 1992, Todd Eldridge got sent even after he withdrew from nationals. So there's always been this, and Nancy Kerrigan in 1994, of course, but there's always been this kind of leeway for other skaters. I think it just really got magnified by the by what happened in 2018, especially. I think that was the big one because Ross Minor finished his second. He's not even. I think he ended up being like second alternate or third alternate. Like he wasn't even in the picture for that spot.
Right.
And then also Ashley Wagner was left off the team, and she was not happy about it. But then she also has to remember in 2014 she was the benefactor of the opposite situation where it was questionable whether she should go there. So it's in the end, it's basically going to be whatever they want to do. They're going to find a way to do it, even with these scores. I would say. But most of the spots I would say are pretty much filled, and it's just those last few. I would say in the men, probably the last spot because I think Jason Brown's going to go regardless, and I think also the
I
pairs
agree.
probably the second spot. But even I mean, pairs is so wide open, you never know what's going to happen there. So yeah, we'll link to that. Rather than reading through the entire document of the points because it's a lot, I think just looking visually at the chart will help you understand a little bit more because you'll see where the points are coming from and how they're factored. So,
And that's going to be a theme a lot here. We're not going to read over every
yeah, because we'll
single
have an
detail.
eight
We'll try
hour
to generally
video.
explain. I know. Yeah. Yeah. 8 hour video. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some of you who'll be like, oh, we would love an 8 hour video.
Yeah. No, no,
Yeah.
thank you.
I know.
Um,
Go ahead. You would get.
yeah, so next question was why do team events show nine judges, but individual events show 13? Why is the US the only country with judges in all disciplines while Japan has none in men's?
And I think we're referring to the
So
Olympics here. Yeah.
yeah. So because we're talking about the team event that starts the Olympics and then the individual events, and then why? Because we already know the draws for the judges. They're asking why one country that has such strong skaters doesn't have a judge. Um, so okay, so first of all, why do the team events use nine and individual events use 13? You start.
Yeah, so like the team event, it's new, right? It only exists once every 4 years at the Olympics. It's something that was like created to more or less create another event without necessarily having to add a bunch of more skaters to the allotment that figure skating gets, right? So they have that few extra and everything. And ultimately, like it's not as serious of a competition as the individual event, you know? I think that's the reasoning behind it. So that's why you already know who the nine judges are, or in terms of like countries. And it's also adding up points across 8 different events. And so let's say bias of a judge in one segment isn't going to have, theoretically anyway, as big of an effect as it would in the individual events where it's just 2 segments, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then in the individual events, yeah, there's 13 countries, but only 9 judges get chosen for each segment. And so for the first part, rhythm dance or the short program, 9 are randomly drawn. So 4 don't. And then for the long program, those 4 are automatically in the long program, and the rest of the 5 are drawn from the judges in the short program.
Mhm.
So theoretically, everyone gets to judge. There have been random events where that didn't happen, like at 2016 Worlds in the men's, the U.S. judge I don't think got drawn somehow for either portion. So randomly things like that could happen. I don't know the full details of that,
No.
but it does happen. And so, why is the US the only country drawn for all disciplines? So, it's just a random draw, too. So, at the beginning of the season, all the countries that can qualify to have a judge in these big events, they're just randomly drawn. So you have some random draw of which 13 countries get to be in that pool, and then come time the event, there's another random draw of which countries judges actually get to judge in each segment.
Really quick on the team event too, how it's not really as big of a deal. You know, I think every single year since it started in 2014, you can basically say what the podium's going to be, and we're saying pretty
Yeah,
confidently. It looks like the US is going to win this one, Japan's going to finish second place, and then it's either Georgia or Italy for third place. Now, because we can already say that there's two things. Yes, it's not that serious. B, it needs to be after the individual events. We've said this since
in
the
my
beginning of
opinion. Yeah.
time. I don't know why it's the first. And then also I would say, and I referenced this probably in the World Team Trophy video, but I think the only way that this event is going to become more exciting. At first I thought change the scale of points in the free skates with the 5 teams, but that's not really going to make a huge difference. So what you need to do is let all 10 teams skate in both programs, and then there is so much unpredictability. Someone might have the skate of their
Right.
life and throw off another team, and really it would be not one of those cases where typically you go into the last day, there's 3 days in the team event. By the last day, you already know the medals, and by the last event, you already know who's going to win the gold medal. Like it
Right.
doesn't
It,
matter
for
how
the
they
most
skate.
part, it's decided in the short program,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because the
exactly.
variability, it's
Yeah,
basically you get what, 6 to 10 points for the long program. So the
yeah,
most you can lose 4 points.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
really not as high
yeah,
stakes as it should be. I agree.
yeah. So yeah, it's not a big deal. They keep the same judges, and that's that.
It's more or
Uh,
less built to benefit the large federations.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Get another medal for them. Okay, so Eric Data Brown, what of the practices do the judges get to watch? Interested in how much you both think that might affect the scoring, especially PCS, before the event has even started. I have a lot to say about it. What about you?
Yeah, so just like officially, just like us, they can watch the practices and they do. So the judges and the technical panel will go watch practices, watch the run throughs. And the technical panel is actually has a copy of the planned program elements, and they're going through that and marking it
Hmm.
off. Like you can
Hmm.
see them every single time, marking it
Yep.
off that, hey, okay, this, and that kind of helps them prepare
Yeah.
for the actual competition
Right.
itself. Um, for the most part, the technical panel stays through all the practices. Judges don't. I have definitely seen them come late, leave early. Like
Oh
it's not
yeah,
as
yeah.
big of a deal for the judges to
The
do
tech
it.
panel was there the
Yeah.
entire every single
Hmm.
practice. The tech panel was there at Skate America.
Yeah.
Every single practice from start to
Yep.
finish.
And
So
and then once the run throughs are over and there's just that extra like 10 minutes, they tend to leave, right after, they
yeah,
go do what they
yeah.
do, go have a drink, have lunch, whatever.
Probably drinks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh
right.
yeah, so along these lines, this is the issue I have with Fournier, Baudry, and Cizeron getting that call on the choreographic step in the rhythm dance in Finland because I know Sean was watching every dance practice at Skate America the week before because I was sitting right behind them for most of it. They knew, no one can tell me otherwise, that they didn't put in their notes that there is a big chance that this element was going to be called what it was called. I mean, they had to have planned that.
Yep.
I mean, I think if it was at the spur of the moment, like, there would have been much more review over it and all that, but it was called immediately. It was called immediately in Finland as the element. And this is why I have the biggest issue with this Papergate thing of him handing notes to a coach at Ice Academy Montreal. Actually, the same coach of the team that we're talking about that kind of lost out on this. So I think my issue is if you're going to monitor one team, which is against the rules completely, then it's almost like they sat there, they watched practices and like, we're gonna get them, we're
Yep.
gonna get
Hmm.
them, and then they did it. And that is my biggest issue with this whole thing. Whether the rules are so unclear, I don't care if people say the boards, he was close enough to the board, whatever. The rules are unclear about when the element starts. Basically, if you go straight down the ice in any direction, especially in the free dance, they might call it a choreographic step now. And that is another issue of the ISU having very poor wording on all of their stuff. And it's always like that. It's like it's written in a different language and then it's translated and doesn't make a lot of sense most of the time. That's
Or
how it is.
sometimes there's conflicting
Yeah,
regulations. Which
yeah.
one prevails? Right.
Yeah. So, but also along those lines of so the question, how much it might affect scoring, especially PCS. I think that the technical panels have a good idea of what levels they're going to get, and I think that the judges have a good idea of what PCS they're going to throw out by just watching the practices.
Yep.
Because I urge all of you to watch in the background. Sometimes when skaters are doing elements and you can see the judging panel on the camera, sometimes a skater is going into a completely different element and they're halfway through a spin, for example, and the judge is still on their screen marking the previous element. So they have to more or less know what is going on with the program. They're looking at their screen after every element. They might be missing transitions, they might be missing a little
Yep.
choreography. they have to know, they have to somewhat know the program beforehand. Whether that's fair or not, it's a lot to ask of the judges. You know, way back in the day, way back in
Yeah.
the day, like 2013, I was doing this project when I had my blog where I would open up a spreadsheet and I would call the level, assign the GOE, and assign PCS, and calculate all this stuff. Long before SkatingScores had this score it yourself thing, I did it all just like by hand, and I would let people watch as I did it, and it was a lot to do. But if you take away even assigning the level and typing in, the element name, it's still a lot of stuff to just mark all these GOEs. So they're
It
asking for
is.
a lot of stuff, but they've tried to do where they separate the panels, and that didn't work because then the PCS was all over the place anyways. So I think that it just needs to stick how it is. But yes, I do think that the judges get a lot of reference for what their scores are going to be by watching the practices. 100%.
And we'll get into more too about PCS and just kind of the problems in general with judging and the way like, hey, it's supposed to be more or less objective based on a criteria, but a lot of other stuff goes into play, and we'll talk about that
Yeah.
with a subsequent question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
All right. So
question.
then,
Yeah. So this is kind of like how everyone has felt since the beginning of time, but this is from Alex 5704. Ice dance has always been a mystery. I overheard a coach say there's nothing to judge. They make up the scores. So you start. It is so
I mean, okay,
loaded.
maybe in 6.0, I would say that was very much the case,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
like if you just go look at the 98 Olympics and look at the content between like Grishuk and Platov and Born and Kratz, it's like
yeah,
one team just learned how to skate a month ago. You know what I mean? And one's been training
yeah.
for decades. So like in terms of like the content, right? So supposedly, right, if you're just going by the official criteria, you're evaluating each element individually, and so the panel's evaluating the basically the difficulty and assigning a level, and then the judges are evaluating the execution, right? So you're -5, +5 in grade of execution, and then in the program component scores, they're supposed to be following a rubric. And they kind of use like terms like great, above average, diamond, like, and they're
Mhm.
kind of trying to relate it to these more common
Yeah.
things and what you're supposed to be evaluating for each part.
Mhm.
It's now just three criteria. It used to be five. I honestly don't mind the three.
Yeah. Yeah, you had
But
transitions being
right,
as much as skating skills. Literally, the
hmm
whole foundation of skating and doing like three transitions in the program used to be equal weight. Crazy to me. But anyways.
right, yeah, yeah. And then it wasn't like it was being judged accurately anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but reality can be really different. I'm sure we all seen that. I'm sure that's what this comment or this question is referring to.
Hmm.
But so one of the issues that I have is that judges have to stay within a corridor. And when that doesn't happen, a mark gets flagged and it goes up for review. And sometimes judges get disciplined for this, for like
Hmm.
bias or just not following the rules or being out of step with the rest of the panel. And here's what I mean by the corridor. Every GOE you assign and every program component score you assign needs to be within ±1 of the panel average. And if it's not, it's out of the corridor. And so there's an inherent incentive to judge based on what you think your peers are going to do.
Yes. Yes.
So that becomes the biggest part because you want to keep your job. You don't want to get
Hmm.
suspended from judging. If
Yeah.
you get suspended from judging, your federation's not going to like that. They may not trust you to go out to a competition again, and they may never send you. And that's another thing too. Federations are the ones that decide if a judge gets to go to a competition or not.
And we had a discussion at Worlds, and I don't know if you're going to remember immediately, but I talked
Mhm.
about Chalk and Bates and their Twizzles, the issue that finally people are seeing the light on this year. And I said, well, if I was on this panel, I would probably give them a 0 or maybe a +1 on a good day. And this person, who is a technical controller, said, that's fine that you would do that, but you might not ever get another event to judge ever again from your federation. So that says,
Exactly.
yeah,
Right. And exactly, right? And so there's just all these incentives that
yeah,
basically make you think about all these factors that have nothing to do with what's going on the ice. It's again,
yeah,
what do my peers, what are they going to do? Because I
yeah,
don't want to be out of step with them. And then
yeah.
am I going to upset my federation? Because I don't want this to be my last competition.
Mhm.
And all that goes into it. And I would say probably has a bigger effect than what's actually going on in the ice. And you'll
Mhm.
see like judges who just don't care, right? Who
Yeah.
will still judge the way they want to judge.
Yeah.
Like Joe Inman was one of those infamous people,
Yeah.
which I loved, right? He had
Mhm.
integrity. He's going to judge what he feels is happening based on the criteria.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Joe Inman. You were a really great anyway. Um, and so and why would a federation not send you? Because ultimately they want you to prop up their own skaters and they want you to
Yeah.
judge down the competitors.
Yeah.
And come the Olympics, I bet you the U.S. judge is not going to place Fournier, Baudry, and Cizeron above Chalk and Bates, right? Just for that
Yeah.
very reason. Or, it's going to be like what the Canadians did, and they just sent their federation president in 2018
Yeah.
to be the ice dance judge,
Yeah.
right? And so stuff like that really does happen. And then there's also just the minor things like everyone has personal preferences when it comes to music.
Hmm.
Everyone in skating has relationships, right? So
Yeah.
there's no way you can truly isolate yourself from that. A lot of these judges, technical specialists, they know the coaches. They're friends
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
coaches. They know skaters. They maybe have trained some of these skaters in the past. And sometimes you just don't like somebody, right? So there's always just the inherent bias you would think in everyday interactions too. And then sometimes it's just taste level. Some people have no taste.
Yeah, but we always say like if you're crying over everything and I'm kind of just like whatever, but if something grabs you emotionally in a presentation wise, I can't really argue that because it is still so
Are the
subjective in that
rules.
sense. But you go into the technical side of the sport, which is what we argue the most. There are rules, there is a rubric, there is this
Right.
is exactly what to do and you need to follow that. That is one of the separations of I would say where skating can still be so all over the place. But even in skating skills, I mean, these judges have seen enough skating that they should be able to reasonably say what tier the skaters are in. But even then, you see skaters like Boyang Jin gets PCS in the eights and skating skills
Right.
and
And,
stuff like that.
and you
So,
and you have those issues like you pointed out, like with Dennis 10 getting sixes in one phase, but then all of a sudden he's a medal threat and now he's getting like eights and
oh
nines in the
yeah,
next
Frank
phase.
Carroll pointed that out. Yeah, Frank
Right.
Carroll was
Yeah.
like all of a sudden overnight, like he's suddenly
Hmm.
improved this much. So. Yeah. All right, next question. I'd love for you to break down ice dance protocols. Yeah, that's
Yeah, we
gonna
need a
be a
whole
long
video
one.
for that.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to go over that later.
Yeah.
We will link though to the communications for ice dance that lay out,
Hmm.
what the required elements are, what
Hmm.
calls for levels and everything. I would love to go in that, but it's one of those like I imagine just explaining one element would take like 20 minutes,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So we'll go
Well,
over it later.
also,
Maybe a good
but
video.
but I have a sneaking suspicion that the Grand Prix Final is going to be so heated in the ice dance event that we're going to have to probably go kind of element by element, which
Oh
I
dear.
wouldn't
Okay.
mind doing, but I sense that's where it's going to go. So you'll
So maybe a
probably
whole
get a
separate
little
video for
bit.
ice dance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might get your wish to an extent coming up next week.
Yeah.
Also, I would love for you guys to answer how you think AI will work as a technical controller. Will it make things more fair and take away the horrible subjectiveness? So, I mean, we already see that AI is kind of working in Japanese events. They have like the distance, the height of the usually it's the double axle
The
that they'll show the
jumps.
stats
Yeah.
on the
It's just
screen.
using calculus. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry.
Um, so would it reduce subjectivity? I mean, I would hope so. Knowing what technology can do these days, I would
Yeah.
assume they would be able to put some kind of like automatic sensor on the ice, like without actually having a sensor, but like a technical whatever thing that is just going to sense where the blade hit, and then they're going to be able to tell the rotation amount of time they were in the air, how much rotation they actually got off the ice. Even if they have to put stuff on the skates, I don't know if that's going to ever get to that point, but it does need to have like a second eye in the sense that it's just not the technical panel because for years and years and
Yeah.
years I've ranted how this excuse of the camera angle isn't that good. Meanwhile, you're looking up at the jumbotron and they're giving you 15 different angles of the jump in slow motion, so it's like
Yeah.
you have the technology to pull that in, use it.
And ultimately too, the camera angle doesn't matter if you just choose not to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't.
Right.
Sometimes they
And
don't.
and then the biggest example I still remember is 2016 Worlds, where Medvedeva skated and they reviewed zero of her elements,
Yeah.
zero reviews.
Yeah.
And then the panel is just sitting up there watching the Jumbotron like everyone else, and the Jumbotron replays her giant fluts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, okay, thanks, panel, for
Yeah.
doing your job. Great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I imagine like the biggest lowest hanging fruit would be just that jump rotations, right? And then was something actually under? I really hope they don't keep the queue around for AI because that's going to be the
After
biggest
after
crazy.
after this season, it needs to go away.
It
That
needs to
needs
go
to go
away.
away.
Yeah, because I don't see how you can objectively say like, hey, exactly on the quarter with
Ninety point
AI
zero
because
zero
even
zero
then there's some
degrees.
variability. And
Yeah,
so like
yeah,
though I think though it will kind of calm things a little bit if it's more or less trusted. And I think about tennis, you don't see anyone arguing over calls anymore because it's
Yeah.
all just automatic line calling
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
right? And skaters, tennis players accept it and move on. And I
Yeah.
would like that if it's good enough here for skating, I would love to just even as someone who's watching, accept it and move on instead of sitting here hand wringing like a week later still, you know? Even with tennis, everyone more or less accepts that there is some margin of error for the calls, but
Yeah.
they accept it because it's a lower margin of error than human error.
Right.
And I think that's going to be the case here. I'd love that to be the case. And then even then, I think giving like judges a graph of here's all the ice they covered, right? Like
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
showing the path. Because I
Yeah.
remember Joe Inman was talking about this once upon a time too, where he would sit there and as skaters were skating, just trace it, right? And so he could have his own visual for each skater, and he would do both, just blindly,
Hmm.
just somehow is able to do that. And then even then, give like objective stats maybe of like here's how much distance this skater actually covered, right, etc. And
Hmm.
actually giving more of that kind of like using the full
Yeah.
ice coverage, like in an objective way
Hmm.
for judges to evaluate.
Hmm.
But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. I don't expect anything to happen anytime soon. I first and
Yeah,
foremost, this summer, get rid of the queue. Get
please.
the technical committee and ice dance maybe out completely or get some sense into them because the skaters are literally reaching out to us now and saying that they don't like anything. So if your own skaters, if the fans are not responding well to any of this, then wouldn't you think like we need
Right.
to make a major change?
So if you're right, if you're not doing this for the skaters, you're not doing this for the fans, then what's really going on in the decisions the Ice Dance Technical Committee is making? And
Yeah.
there really is no good reason. And
Yeah.
then it ranges from the reckless to nefarious. And I would definitely describe the decisions as reckless to nefarious
Hmm.
happening right now. Um, yeah. So, but the next question, user Sabine Nadal, right? Rules are so complicated in ice dance and that sometimes we are lost, right? And so we're going to post those. There's a lot that's going on here. Why is it so complex? And ultimately, it's this slow evolution. If you look back at ice dance, even from like before the 90s, it was really crazy. It was super dramatic. You had people lying on the ice. Eventually, they made that illegal, right? Because like what you're
Everyone
not
was dying.
skating, everyone's just dying on the ice. Everyone's just being super dramatic. The content was low. And then when they try to like refine it in like the 90s, even then you'll see just like crazy stuff like Born and Kratz medaling at 98 Worlds when their free dance has no content in it. I think Pasha Grishuk makes the comment, I could learn that dance in a week and skate it better.
We always
um,
reference this, and we
because
love
it's so
Shaylin Bourne now.
egregious. I know she's such a great choreographer, love her as a choreographer, but it's just the most egregious example in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they've never had a program that empty
Yeah.
before or after. So it really is the biggest thing. And it's also the one that TV kept trying to tell us was so good
Yep.
and that they're getting cheated.
Yep. All of North American
So
media was pushing that down our
right.
throats. Poor them.
Poor them when really like no, this is their coach who taught them the compulsory dance wrong. And a free dance that has one difficult step in it, you know? I think it's like one outside mohawk and that's it. Like the entire program. Um yeah. And so they'll like we'll link to these documents that basically lay out what the requirements are and required elements. And so once they started trying to make the sport more objective after the 98 season, there were required elements now. You
Yeah.
had to do a step
Yeah.
sequence.
Yeah.
You had to do like 4 to 6
Lifts.
lifts,
Yeah.
but not even like a set number. You had a range of number of lifts you could do, right? You
Hmm.
could, I think you had to do 2 sets of twizzles and a dance spin. And I love watching these dance spins in like the 98, 99 season because they're so terrible.
Yeah.
Because no one really knew how to do them, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then there's the scale of values too, and that's in a separate document. And then how the rubrics for how judges are supposed to judge grade of execution and PCS. So it's just been a slow kind of build to
Yeah.
trying to objectify ice
Yeah.
dance. And we've seen that it's way less free. And even now, they're trying to increase freedom by introducing more choreographic elements that have these crazy vague rules. It has just gone kind of like way off the deep end, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Two things that have changed pretty drastically since the start of IJS in ice dancing are that the twizzles, the 1 foot step, the when they used to do pattern, they now get individual scores. They're marked individually. They're not marked two she'll skate as one like you see in pairs. If someone does a triple toe and the other one does a single toe, you're getting credit for a single toe
Right.
in the end. But in Twizzles, for example, you get each skater's assigned a level, and then again, the choreographic elements becoming such a big part of the sport, that was something
Yeah.
that was not even heard of until
And I
7, 8 years ago. So,
And I think that's like too. So that's a great thing to point out, which I honestly forgot about. That they call so many elements separately for the woman and man now in ice
mhm,
dance, and I feel like that was a response to what happened at the 2014 Worlds, where Ilyinic and Katsalapov were the favorites to win. They just won the bronze medal at the Olympics. The
mhm,
top two weren't going to Worlds, and
mhm,
then Nikita just totally biffs the twizzle and the rhythm dance, while she completes it, and they get 0 points. Whereas if she had gotten points for her half, they would have won the title. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you should live and die based on the weakest partner,
yeah.
but that's just me. All right, next one. Lauren Freeman. I'm trying to learn the rules on ice dance, how elements are called, and how grade of execution is. I love this. Supposed to be assigned. Love that parenthetical. So we're gonna go over this in the next question in terms of just what meets, requirements. But again, that communication, it's 2176. It puts the minimum requirements for something to be called. And once those minimum requirements are met, you get base level, and then you have to basically do these additional features, more difficulty, et cetera, to get one, two, three, and four. And then grade of execution, we'll link to that too. It's a rubric. And so in ice dance specifically,
Mhm,
it is in singles too, but I'll talk about it from my stance. You get negative and positive features. And what you'll look at when you look at the document is there a lot of them are just kind of like opposing, right? You either have speed or you don't. You can get plus features or you don't, right? And so
mhm,
for all these features, you can get +1 to 3 features for a single category or -1 to -3 for a single category, right? Like having no flow and speed, -3, crazy amounts of flow speed, whatever, right? And then you add up the net number.
mhm,
So you might have like 3 negative features and 6 positive features. So that nets to a +3. And then you assign the grade of execution based on that net figure. In an ice dance, it's basically 1 to 2 positive features gets you +1, 3 to 4 gets you 2, 5 to 6 gets you 3, 7 to 8 gets you 4, and then 9 and above gets you a 5.
mhm.
And the one caveat being if there's a single negative feature, you cannot assign more than +3. And that's something we harp on a lot because the judges more or less ignore that part all
Yeah,
the time, where there are elements with clear negative features and you'll still see a +4 pop up. And it's mostly into the twizzle elements of a lot of these top
yeah.
teams. Like it's 1 foot
Yeah,
turns too. It's the thing that bothers me the most. And that's outlined in ISU Communication 2704. Um, and they update these every once in a while. They've done a lot to try to simplify everything into a unified chart, and you can see that. I actually think it's like really useful, like in my
yeah,
opinion.
it
Yeah,
is. If there's like a serious fall in one of these elements, you still don't necessarily get a -5. I mean, you would think you
right.
would, but the way that it's weird because if you look at the chart, element enhances the choreography and or character of the chosen music, rhythm, character, or theme. Element reflects the nuances in the music. This, if you're not really having like a lot of nuance in the music, you could say +3 for that because it's fitting the music beautifully. They're gliding, it's fitting it. So that's +3. That's three positive features right there.
Yeah,
And then another one where you could get up to three, between one and three positive features, is element is innovative and or creative and or includes a variety of holds. Now this is also very subjective. You could say this is so innovative, I don't watch that much skating, it looks innovative to me, +3 for this, +3 positive features. So already just from those two things, you're at, hypothetically,
six
you're at a
to three.
+6 positive features. That's a +3 GOE overall. And now you just need one more thing somewhere. You're close together, you have speed, whatever, and you're at a +4. So it's very, very easy to rack up these points. Where I think they don't really apply everything is they just count these positive features and then they don't really look
Right,
at
and
the
then
negative features.
mhm. And that's the thing too, I want to emphasize too. Like I say this before, but we all have lizard brains, right? Like, does something match the music? Did it move you in some way? Did you go like, wow, that was like perfectly on the beat, great? Like, and I still remember the straight line lift that DiMuggio and Lemercier do, where
2024.
she's just 2024, right? And it's
But
just
they do it
bam
all
on the
they do it every
music.
program.
They do it
But for
every
that
program now,
program,
but like,
yeah.
yeah, it was that
Yeah.
program was so good.
Yeah.
For me, it's like +5, right?
Yeah.
Because of that. Like you're
Yeah.
giving those 3 features, it's so smooth, everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one thing to too, again, the positive and negative features, they're opposites. So yeah, you can get +3 for an element that enhanced the choreography and character of the chosen music,
Right.
right? You can get 3
Yeah.
positive features. You can also lose three
Yeah.
features for an element that does not reflect the choreography of the chosen music and rhythm. And we
Yeah.
say this a lot where skaters are just skating through an element where this lift has nothing to do with the music. Again, like
Yeah.
I look back at that Turandot program with that rotational lift that has no reference to what's
Yeah.
going on with the
Yeah.
music. To me, that's negative three
Yeah.
features, right? Because it's so egregiously just not to the music.
But
And that's basically every element in that program.
I what I will say is I think it's kind of a double-edged sword because this is another instance of, well, aside from the choreographic elements, this is
Mhm.
kind of like a double dipping too, because it's like if everything fits choreographically really well, then this should be applied to the PCS. But then you're also giving kind of the benefit of the doubt in that it matches in all
Right.
of the elements as well. And that's where you're racking up the most points. Those two things that I said, is it innovative or creative? Does it match the music? This is where you're getting the most positive features, potentially the most positive features out
Right.
of everything. So I
And there
don't
are some
know.
that are per partner too.
Yeah.
Like the one is body lines and pose of both
Yeah.
partners are aesthetically pleasing. And
Yeah.
you can get 1 to 2 positive features for that.
Yeah.
You can also lose and get 1 to 2 negative features if the poses or moves are awkward and not aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
But going back to what Tony was referencing about, getting 3 features for having an element that goes perfectly with the music, and then 3 features for an element that's super cool and innovative, that's +6. And let's say they both partners look so beautiful in this and you just are so enamored, you can get +2 for each of them. There's your 10 positive features right there
Yeah.
from only 3 criteria out of the 11,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
there's
And so
if you add it all up, so
you're
there's
adding how many positive features you can
23.
get.
Yeah, 23, but then you can also get per partner on some of these. So, um there's like probably 28, 29, 30 positive features that you could rack up.
Mhm.
Um
And like
one
some of
thing,
these are specific to elements, but if you look at this, twizzles apply to every single one of these criteria, right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And so you could have like a 27 positive feature twizzle,
Yeah. Yeah,
theoretically.
exactly.
Mhm.
So, one thing I will say though is that I don't know how much the judges are calculating this in their heads. Like
They're
they
not.
don't have this sheet in front of them. So they're really just going on what fans tend to do too is they had a little bobble, okay, give them a +3 instead of a +5. They had this or that, give them a +2 instead of that. I think that's what the judges are doing more or less as well. The only way they could really do it accurately to say, okay, this is what they should get is if every single one of these criteria came up on the screen and they had to like check the boxes of each one.
Right,
But that
exactly.
would be
Mhm.
hours and hours worth of judging, and that's never going to happen. So I think it's more
They have
just,
issues of judges just submitting their final
yeah,
scores at the end. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or putting in like a 0.25 for the components when it should be. But one thing I would say is I know that in ice dance it's kind of like you referenced that one lift that matched the music so perfectly it should be +5. I think that as far as this double dipping of the PCS, I think they should really reconsider these being positive features or negative features. I really think it just needs to be element based how it's performed,
Mhm.
and you're kind of giving this subjectivity to give the high scores anyways, because you really could say, I mean, any person can say every single element matched the music. I give a +3 features for every single element, but that doesn't mean that it actually is true. But um, I mean, I guess for all of these, you could say it's subjective too. Like, are they close enough, in my opinion? Do they have speed enough, in my opinion? In the case of Chalk and Bates, I feel like they never have enough speed. They rotate in place on their twizzles. They don't move out, but no one ever calls them for it. I mean, they finally did get called more or less this season, but this is something I've been saying for years and years and years. So I feel like, even if they changed this rubric to how you could get to the +5 or the -5, I don't think it's really going to make a difference. I think people are still going to
Yeah.
kind of judge by reputation, and the later teams are always going to get the innovativeness and the creativity, and it's just that is what it is.
I agree with you. Yeah. Next question here.
Yeah.
Anna DuPont, 7615. I would be interested in a breakdown of the different ice dance elements, but I'd also really like a summary of step sequences and other disciplines. Yeah, we're probably not going to be able to get to all of that. And then what is a cluster? And why would you do more than one if only the first cluster is judged? So I'll separate these out. So first, just the breakdown of the ice dance elements. We're not going to go into complete everything. We'll just talk
Yeah.
about like the minimum definitions. But ultimately, right now, a dance lift, no matter the type, it's called when one partner holds the other off the ice for at least 3 seconds. That's it.
Mhm.
That's all it takes. And you'll meet base level, more or less. And then a dance spin. it's at least three rotations continuously on one foot by both partners simultaneously in any part of that spin, right? So once that hits, then you can get to call the element, you get to call it base level.
Just before we
But
go further, dance lift. Explain why Barbara Fusser-Polly always has a stopwatch and
oh,
why.
okay. So she has a stopwatch because they used to be called like short lifts and long lifts, and now they just have short lifts that can turn into a combination lift, right? But essentially, a dance lift has to now be 8 seconds. It cannot be longer than 8 seconds. But when this first came out, it was something ridiculous like 5 seconds. And you had 5 seconds to do this short lift and 10 seconds to do this longer lift. And so that stopwatch was really like something that you had to pay attention to because it's almost impossible to get into position and then hold a difficult position for 3 seconds and then exit it
Hmm.
all within 5 seconds.
Hmm.
They then made it six. Teams were still having extended lifts because it was taking too long to get into like flashier lift
Hmm.
positions. I still think of Capellini and Lanote when they had that like she's just more or less standing up on him lift that to me was never in time. They just barely ever got called for it. Like, because I would time that every time too. And I'm like, this is definitely 7, 8 seconds, 7 or 8 seconds.
Hmm.
And so now they've extended it again. And so again, that stopwatch really matters because that's a whole point that you lose for an extended lift. And then the combination lift can only be 13
13.
seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And that's because in a combination lift, basically the exit to one lift is the entry to another. So you're
So they
just
don't
kind
have
of
their
more or less
preparation.
removing a
Yeah.
phase, right? And we'll get into that when we eventually talk about lifts in probably a subsequent video, but
Hmm.
there's a reason why. Sets of twizzles. So whenever you see a twizzle, what you're seeing is two sets of twizzles done simultaneously. And that's really all that's required to get a call. You'll see a third set, but that's just adding another feature for level. The third set's not required at all. It was just the easiest thing for a lot of these teams to do to get that feature.
Hmm.
So a twizzle is called just once skaters just perform at least one rotation in each of the two sets of twizzles. And that's all that's required, right? To get base
Hmm.
level, one rotation.
Yep.
Um, and then that's 1 foot turds. And this is the one that's a newer element, I believe got introduced in the 2018-19 season. And so that's why you see a team that like Shibutanis have no experience with this element, whereas these other teams have had like almost a decade with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's each partner performs the difficult turns on 1 foot on their same foot. And they're not in hold, they cannot touch, they cannot be in contact. And it must be started with the first difficult turn done simultaneously,
Yeah.
right? And so you'll see that. Usually the very first turn is simultaneous.
Yeah.
Everything after that can be off pace. You don't
Out of
have to do it
order.
at the same
Yeah.
time. Out of order, it, it
We
doesn't have
saw
to be
it.
at the same time
We
anymore.
saw it with the French team, Guillaume and Laurence, but then they ended up changing it back. I think it's very
Mhm.
difficult for them to judge when they're doing different elements. In my opinion, we've seen a
Mhm.
few teams try to do it, and I feel like more often than not, they'll switch back to more or less doing the same thing at the same time, so that it's easier to
Mhm.
judge and hopefully get those levels.
Yeah,
But yeah.
and that element it starts getting called when at least one type of difficult turn is executed by each partner. So you'll see sometimes too, even like with Fournier, Baudry, and Cizeron at Grand Prix France, they started at the same time, but then they started changing around everything after that. Which again, I love that element. I think it's probably one of my favorite 1 foot turns. That's since
Hmm.
this introduction of this element, I can't think of a better one. But I really hate that they changed it. I want them to go back, but we'll see.
Hmm.
All right, the step sequences. So there's a lot of different styles here, and you'll see that. And when they say stuff like style B, style D, etc., it just means that the criteria for level are different. But ultimately, it's a series of steps and turns, and then sometimes holds and changes of holds done in some prescribed pattern. And the most conventional ones that we'll see, uh, we think about diagonal. So it's along the long axis diagonally. It's sometimes not strict. You can kind of just, a lot of teams will just kind of do a little zigzag along the diagonal, midline, straight across, but you see that all the time. And a lot of these elements can be no touch too. And you see that in the rhythm dance, so they just do a midline along the long
Hmm.
axis, not touching.
Hmm.
Circular, where you're just going in a circle, and then serpentine, where you're just drawing more or less that serpentine pattern on the ice, right? And you'll see a lot of those even today. And then the pattern dances, which we don't really see all that often in seniors anymore. Some of the rhythm dance elements are still based on them, but they're more or less just kind of the full circuit of the ring for the most
Yeah.
part, right? Somehow.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll cross like the long axis, different places, but it's all just some prescribed pattern, which the ISU publishes, and you can actually look at what the patterns are supposed to be, where the steps are supposed to be done for all of these compulsory patterns and everything. And they still have to do them in juniors. So if you watch juniors, you'll see that.
Yeah. And a lot of people like
Yeah.
what the junior programs have required of the skaters more so than what we see in
hmm
kind of the
Because you're actually
stale.
judging the technical
You're
merit.
judging the ability of the skating. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
way more than you do in seniors. Because
Yeah.
seniors is all vibes now, like we keep
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Um, so the choreographic elements. These are actually way less simple to describe, weirdly enough, than the
Yeah.
actual real elements.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into detail for each one.
Yeah.
I'll give the general overview. I won't go into the clarifications because that's
No.
a whole nother video. But you have the newest choreographic element, which is the choreographic assisted jumps or lifting movements, and that's just at least three assisted jump movements performed continuously, and that can be done anywhere in the program because there's no other like element. It's not going to get confused.
Hmm.
You have the choreographic character step sequence, and that can be performed anywhere in the program,
Well, yeah.
depending on the
Yeah.
pattern you do in the free dance, right?
In the free
Because
dance. Yeah. Yeah.
right, but in the rhythm dance, it has to be done on the short axis, and but in the free dance, it can be done in different patterns. It can be circular, it can be along the diagonal, it
Diagonal.
can be
Yeah.
midline, it can be on the short axis. And in the free dance, it just has to be a different pattern than the one you choose for your step sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you still have to go barrier to barrier. And that's something that bothers me too, because it can be done before the step sequence. So you could do that in a circle. But like if you do it circularly, could that then be called a step sequence, even though it's
Yeah.
clearly a
That's
choreographic
yeah.
step, right? It's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
vague thing in the rules that teams
Yep.
don't even bother touching.
Yeah.
You have the hydroblading movement, and that's I think the second newest one. And you see Piper and Paul do that in
Hmm.
the latest version of Vincent, right? And that's just performed anywhere in the program during both programs, and ultimately it's when they're like in that really kind of like low, almost like a squat position. There's
Hmm.
different types of like hydroblading you can see.
Born in Kratz.
Born
Thank
in
you for that.
Kratz,
Yeah.
Born in Kratz, yeah, pretty much
Yeah.
put that in every single one of their programs.
Yeah.
You have the choreographic lift, and basically it's just another dance lift. It can be 3 seconds to 10 seconds. It's not called unless it's at least 3 seconds.
Hmm.
And this is one of those elements that has to be done after all the required lifts.
Hmm.
You cannot do a choreographic lift to start the
Which
program.
clarifies what it is. This is
Right.
the trade-off of not getting these wrong elements called. There are so few
Mhm.
requirements of this thing, and one of the requirement is you just need to do it after everything else is
Yeah.
done.
And
Yeah.
back when choreographic elements weren't even really being scored or had really low points, this is the one you most commonly would see anyway.
Hmm.
Um, get the choreographic sliding movement, which we see now, and that just basically it can be formed anywhere in a program. Again, no like elements, and that's during which both partners perform some type of sliding movement. And what you'll see though a lot is like teams will like, oh, I'm putting my hand on the ice and my hand is sliding. That counts as a sliding movement, right? And you see that with Chalk and Bates's. It was their lift from the Alien program, or sorry, the choreographic slide from the Alien program that's now in their
They pull it
bullfighting
in. Yeah.
program. Yeah, where like he lifts her up, puts her down, and they just both put their hands on the ice. That's a slide. Some teams literally are just full body sliding on the ice, right? And you've seen some teams do that too. Um, and then you have the choreographic spinning movement, and it can be performed anywhere in the program, and just both partners performing at least three continuous rotations in any type of hold. And then the choreographic twizzling movement, and that's a twizzling movement performed after the required set of twizzles, and it's composed of two parts. So both partners have to do at least one part, and then after that, only one partner needs to do the second part. And I think this is one of those elements that's been really hard for teams to find a way to do effectively. That's still like a wow. The only
Hmm.
one I feel like I ever liked is one that Hubble and Donahue abandoned in their Romeo and Juliet free dance. So like you never really see teams do all that well with it anyway. And then
So
there's the
we're
second
gonna,
part. Oh, go
well,
ahead.
yeah, we're gonna make an entire video about especially these choreographic elements because they are, if you read the rule book, sometimes there's more details about what needs to be included and what needs to be done than just simply learning some of the other elements. But we'll go,
Yeah.
Eventually, I think, like I said, I think we're gonna have to go really in depth in the Grand Prix Finals, so we'll probably go over a lot of this stuff
I'm
when we
like,
get to
please don't
that.
be controversial.
Yeah.
But it will be. So the second part of this question is what is a cluster in singles and pair step sequences, and why include more than one if only the first cluster is judged? So I think this is kind of I think you mean combination, so it could be like a translation issue. But yeah, so in singles and pairs, a combination of turns is required. And the requirements for level 4 include two combinations of difficult turns, one per foot. And so only the first set on each foot is considered for level. And that's a change. And I think it's because they used to not require it to be on different feet. There used to be a set number. I still
Yeah.
think it was two, right? And but you could do more than one as long as you completed one correctly. And so
Hmm.
what this would happen all the time with the Atari skaters, where she would have her skaters do more than necessary just
Yeah.
to make sure you're hitting
Make
that
sure you're hitting the
level.
level. Yeah.
And and ultimately though, what that does is just it takes more time. It means you're not paying attention to the music. It makes the step sequences longer. I think it makes programs more boring. And so I think they were trying to be like, hey, we don't want you to include any type of fail-safe redundancies. Do it right the first time. And so focus on the cleanliness, right? And all that. Don't focus on just doing this 30 times until you get it right.
So I think I don't think cluster is like a translation issue. I just think it's like just think of it as
Oh,
another
okay.
word as like
Oh,
a
okay,
group
yeah.
that needs to be in sequence, like without breaking.
Hmm.
So for
Yes.
me, like you do these three edges that are, there's no crossovers in between. You can't push, you can't like reset your body. It's just like it's like a set. It's like a mix of things, and it could
Hmm.
be from you could go from like I don't know, a bracket to a rocker to a counter.
Yeah.
But as
And you have to
long
do
as it's
three,
all
three in a
yeah,
row.
at least
Yeah.
three. Yeah, yeah.
And
So
each one has to have like a different turn. So you have to, so there's five you can choose from. You get to repeat one of them in each of these clusters or
mhm.
combinations. And so that's just really where it comes from. All right. So next question from, oh God, I'm not going to pronounce this.
Yuri
Uriari.
Ori. Yeah.
All right. Um, my question has to do with identifying turns, right? So this is what Tony was talking about. Is there a way to learn to identify counters, rockers, brackets, chalk jaws, etc., even if you've never skated? Yes. Would tutorials help? Yes.
We will
Is it
find
worth
videos.
trying?
Yeah.
Yes. The way I think about it is they're all based on the entry and exit edge or the curve, right? And then which direction you rotate in to get to that exit edge or curve. And every edge has a natural direction. So if you're skating on one
Mhm.
edge, you're skating, I think my camera is doing this clockwise, or you're skating another edge and you're going counterclockwise, right? So just think about that. Every edge has some type of natural rotational direction. And then when you exit, you can exit on the same edge and stay on that same curve, or you can exit on the opposite edge and curve. And so it just starts with that basis. And then how do you rotate to get to that exit edge, and it's all based on that. That's how I think about it. Is there a way that for you that like clarifies it
I
better?
mean, just from having skated, it's just something that I've seen, and
Right.
I've done, so I
You
know where
just
the
do.
body needs to go. I mean,
Hmm.
like I said in the beginning, the very first thing that you will learn once you can stand up on skates and not fall over is they'll put you on a line, like a hockey line, and they'll have you do a three turn. And from that, if you think about a three turn, and then you learn a bracket, and it's really the same
Hmm.
thing, just you're turning the other direction.
Yeah.
So, um,
And so you can think about them in
uh,
like three pairs too, and it really
yeah,
helps make it
yeah,
easy, right? So like the easiest one that Tony's talking about is that three turn and bracket. So like three turn, you're on a curve, you rotate the same direction. So this is counterclockwise, you rotate counterclockwise, you're on the same curve when you exit.
you're
And
making like a
then
half
bracket,
circle essentially, but
yeah, it's a
you're
half circle. You're
staying on that
rotating
same.
180 degrees, right?
Yeah,
So you're basically going from forward to backwards or
yeah,
backwards to forward.
yeah, yeah.
A bracket, it's exits, sorry, it enters and exits on that same curve, but instead of rotating with the curve, you're rotating against it.
You're gonna turn your
So,
body the opposite
yeah.
direction
Hmm.
essentially, like what would feel
So,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
right. And you'll see that a lot it's usually like the entry to the 1 foot turns a lot is skaters will use it do a
Hmm.
bracket. And so
Hmm.
if let's say I'm going counterclockwise, so instead of rotating counterclockwise, I'll rotate clockwise 180 and then I'm exiting on the same curve.
Hmm.
And then counter and
And
rocker
rocker, yeah.
are similar, right? They're pairs, except they enter and exit on opposite curves. And so it's like if I'm going counterclockwise, when I exit, I'm now going clockwise,
Yeah.
right? So when I do that turn, I'm just going in a different direction. And
Mhm.
so this is the one, these are the two that are probably the most difficult for skaters. They'll talk about
Ooh.
which one they have preferences, just like with jumps. Some can't even do a counter. You'll see that a lot. I
Yeah.
think Alyona Savchenko talked about that to where she was when she's coaching, she was trying to like tell skaters like, hey, do a rocker counter here. And they were like, what? So a lot of times skaters won't even know, right? They just
Yeah.
do what they're told to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, so let's say like I am doing a rocker, right?
Yeah.
So I am going counterclockwise. I will rotate in the same direction, right? So if I'm going counterclockwise, I'll rotate clockwise. And then, but when I rotate, I exit on the opposite. And so let's say I'm on an inside edge here. You then exit also on the inside edge in the opposite direction.
Hmm.
And skaters will say this is difficult because the edge that you exit on and that you rotate into are opposite. And so you now
Hmm.
have to arrest your counterclockwise momentum and then start going
Yeah.
clockwise.
Yeah.
Counter, you'll see Hanyu famously does a counter into his triple axel. That's kind of
Hmm.
like iconic for a lot of
Hmm.
fans. But same thing, I'll go counterclockwise and then I will actually start rotating clockwise to exit,
Yeah.
right? And so this is the one though that counter and rocker, you can also think they start and end on both inside inside or
The
outside
same
outside
same
edges.
curve. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas a three turn in a bracket will start on an inside, end on an outside, or start on an outside, end on an inside. And those are the turns, right?
Yeah.
The 1 foot turns.
Yeah.
And then you have the actual steps. And the difficult steps are Mohawk and Choctaw. They
Yeah.
now call them C and S turns, depending, just
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
trying to move away from the
Yeah.
appropriation terms. But a lot of people will still say this. You'll see Mark Henretti talk about it too, still Mohawk, Choctaw. And
Hmm.
so, same thing. Mohawk starts and ends on the same curve, right?
Yeah.
So you can go inside, inside, outside, outside. An inside to inside is not considered a difficult turn. It has to be an outside Mohawk for it to start. And ultimately, it's because if you're thinking about your body, like it's a lot harder to go from outside to outside than inside to inside. And then a Choctaw just changes that. So when you step, let's say I'm starting on an inside edge, I'll step and I'll ends on an opposite curve on the
Going the other
outside.
direction. Exactly.
Other direct, yeah.
Your display of your pen was really good, but we'll link to videos. I found some
I
videos that
know.
I think she goes in. The one I found, I wish I remembered her name offhand, but I'll link to them. It goes into like 10 or 15-minute videos per edge, and she really breaks down everything from start to finish, and
It
it's
sounds
good.
like
But
it's really worth it. You should definitely watch those,
yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
As a practice, I mean, start watching the programs and see if you can just call the edges.
Mhm.
Because this is the basis of everything in skating. I mean, the Mohawk and the Choctaw, sometimes like a three turn basically, all this stuff is used sometimes into entry to jumps too. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what connects
Yeah.
everything to everything else. So, yeah,
And
I
you'll see
think
that a
you
lot.
need
You'll see
to.
skaters do a three turn into the toe all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like that's
Yep.
the biggest one.
Yep.
So many skaters, again, Hanyu counter before his triple axel. So you'll see that
Mhm.
a lot. You'll see the flip enter on a Mohawk all the time.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm. Um, Tony can actually do all these turns. I can do a three turn and a Mohawk.
I mean, I was no, listen, I was a jumper. I like to jump. I learned an axle, and then like 2 weeks later, I was trying double axle. I was just like a freak of just wanting to jump all the time.
Yeah.
The
Don't
basics
ask
were
me to
always
do a
kind of
counter or a
fun.
rocker. I'm not
Yeah.
doing any of those.
Yeah. But I was never the high level, but I understand everything, and I've gone through all of it. So what would the
Yeah.
instruction videos help? Absolutely, yes. So I'll link to them. And then is it worth learning identification
You
for
have to.
understanding ice? You have to. I mean, literally, you have to if you want to truly understand what you're seeing. You could be someone that's just like, oh, the costuming, the music, it's great, but there's really the foundations of skating are really interesting, and if
Right.
you take the time to learn, I mean, it seems like it's daunting, but I promise you, you already know what a three turn is. You've seen it so many times. I mean,
Mhm.
you've really seen a mohawk into a lot of these jumps too, so you should be able to recognize that right away. And then if you think, if you know the three turn, really, if you're looking at a bracket, it's the same thing, just turning the opposite direction. So it's really, I don't know, it's not as daunting as it sounds. We'll link to everything, and
Yeah.
we'll maybe create videos that go into it more. But okay,
Next
next
question.
question from Ryu Sevi. Could you provide examples? Mark was commenting on clean turns in the 1 foot sequence. What does that mean exactly? So
Yeah, so
Well,
that's
it
something that
just goes
we
back to what we're talking
yeah.
about, but yeah, but go
Yeah.
but go on.
But theoretically, the turn meets the definition, right? Does
Yeah,
it enter and exit on the correct edges and curves? And are the entry and exit edges stable, right? So you want to be wobbly. It's controlled,
right.
basically. And then is it clean? Is it scraping the ice? Is it causing like all like the ice to come up? Did they get up on their toe pick before they exited or not? Did it stay purely on the edge,
Yeah.
right? One of the issues is, though, that different panels will have different standards for each of these, or even a panel will have different standards for different groups.
Right.
We've
Yeah.
even been told, right?
Yeah.
And you'll even have outsized personalities on panels kind of push their own views,
Hmm.
and kind of it really does become like whatever their view is matters.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest things, though, if you're just talking in theory, what will happen is these turns aren't clean because, hey, I'll go into one, and let's say I'm doing that like bracket, right? And I'll rotate in the opposite direction of the curve, but instead of exiting on that same like inside or outside edge curve, right? Or sorry, the correct inside or outside edge curve, I'll exit on a flat and then lean into the curve. And that's what you'll see a lot
Yeah.
is a lot of these skaters will exit on the flat and then lean into the curve. And that's
Two.
definitely not clean. That's the
Yeah.
easiest one to see.
So what we're talking about is either an inside edge or an outside edge. Inside edge, you're going to face towards your body. Think like your leg is facing
Right.
in towards your body. Outside edge is going to face away from where your
Oh,
body is.
wait.
But the comparison I have between ice dance and singles is think about a skater that goes into a Lutz or a flip on the flat, or they turn their edge. This is exactly what's happening in ice dance because some of these turns, when you're doing, if you want to go back to the word cluster and you're having to stack these on top of each other, sometimes, it's difficult for you to get these clean turns in. So what will they do? They'll try to aid themselves by going on the flat or maybe going up on the toe pick or scraping. And there's a sweet spot of the blade right in the middle. And this is where it's more towards the front, but this is where you want to be on all your turns. You want to have this perfect, like, no scratching, no ice flying up in the air. You just want to have a clean turn. And what skaters will tend to do, especially these lower ranked skaters that don't really have the experience yet, and they're just getting into the sport, they kind of cheat their turns, for lack of a better term. They'll scrape, they'll when they're supposed to be on the inside edge, they'll be on the outside edge, then they'll really quickly go over to the inside edge, and this is where we're talking about clean turns. Now, I mean, I see a lot of clean turns and then I see low levels, so I think that there's, a lot, and then they call it in
Right.
real time too, which is curious to me
Yeah.
because it's like,
And
where you?
mhm. And sometimes though too, what will happen, and this happened a lot in IJS, they'll jump the turn.
Yeah.
And what that means is that their blade's not staying on the ice. They'll kind of do a little hop,
Hmm.
right?
To get
And
that
so some
momentum to
teams will get
turn.
away with
Yeah.
that. And that was kind of a hallmark of a lot of Igor teams for a while. And they would get all these high levels because they were jumping the turns.
Hmm.
And they started cracking down on that a lot.
Hmm.
It's officially now not a clean turn if you jump it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're saying there is like you're going from inside to outside, you're going from backwards to forward, whatever you want to do. Typically, I would say going from backwards to forwards would be the more challenging thing. So what they're doing is they're kind of giving themselves like a little push that gets them just slightly off the ice so that they
Mhm.
don't have to really keep that contact with the sweet spot of the blade, and they're able to just continue their flow because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've
And that's something that can
definitely,
be really hard to see real time,
yeah,
given the
yeah,
angles you see on TV. That's something where you would probably need to zoom in with the technical panel
yeah,
camera and see that they're doing it. Yeah, because it can
yeah.
be really hard when it's really
Yeah.
minor.
Well, they give us the worst camera angles anyways. They're typically showing like their upper bodies only. They're showing different as they go
I
through a
know.
step
God.
sequence. It's all over the place. So it is
Yeah.
very, very hard.
Mm.
Um,
And yeah, well we'll end on this last question because we have like more we want to go more in depth, but we're gonna end on this one and it's kind of like a really loaded question. But it's from Blue Wags. Thank you. I would love to learn more about the technical side. Here are my questions. For the next season, what would you recommend to the Ice Dance Technical Committee to better balance technique and entertainment? And then, with all the scoring drama, could it carry into the Olympics? How can judges avoid that?
okay,
Do you want to
so
go first? You want me to go
yeah, absolutely.
first?
So, what should the Ice Dance Technical Committee change next season to better balance technique and entertainment? I'm just gonna throw this out there. They're trying to make these viral moments on social media. Skating fans are not the most extroverted people in the world.
I know.
You're not ever going to get those people really involved in the sport. You need to go to what maybe drew people into skating in the first place, and I'm going to tell you, it wasn't 80s and 90s rhythm dances. So I think
Nope.
looking back at the more traditional kind of dance styles would be the way to go because I think people would respect that much more. I think that this younger generation of fans that has grown up solely in IGS is really eager to learn. We see how many questions people have about the scoring. I think a lot of people from 6.0 system couldn't care less about reading the rule book. We see it all the time. There are longtime fans that don't know the first thing about the rules. I think you need to dive into where skating is going as far as this younger generation, and if they are truly interested in the rules, then you know what? Go back to these compulsory kind of requirements of the rhythm dance. Get away from the choreographic elements. I'm telling you, these teams will be able to put out memorable moments in a program. We saw it in the past without having
Right.
them forced into choreographic elements that have GOE that have no sense. So,
Right. To think about this. Think about that first program that really got Papadox and Cicerone on the map where they won the world title, their
Mozart.
Mozart free
Yeah.
dance. There's one choreographic element and it's non-scored.
Hmm.
Right? There's
You
no
don't need
value,
it.
but it's
You don't
still,
need
you
it.
don't need it. It's still such a brilliant program that to me is just almost perfect all the way through.
Mhm.
Like it just tells
Mhm.
a complete three-act story
Yeah.
still, in with all these like elements they have to do. They had to do two-step sequences back then. They had to be
Hmm.
different patterns. But like when I think about programs in the last 4 years, still nothing is as good or as memorable as what Papa Docs and Cicerone gave us. Virtue and More gave us their Mailer program, and I know some folks really don't like it. I'm someone who really does like
I
Mailer.
did.
Again, no choreographic elements in that program.
Hmm.
Like I love that
But
program.
you had to make the choreography be part of the overall
Mhm,
picture and not isolate it into in dance, typically it's not everybody this year, they finally strayed away from it, but typically you throw in all these choreographic elements back to back to back at the end of the program. They don't move from center ice or they're staying in the same general area. There's no flow left in the program. It's just killing the entire reasoning of the program just to throw in and say I have choreography. They need to find a way to be able, this is free dance specific because there's so many choreographic elements now. They need to add more elements that aren't going over the top with GOE like these choreographic elements are, and then leave the choreography to itself.
right.
Intertwine it within the elements, whatever you want to do, but it needs to stay separate. And for the rhythm dance, just get rid of the whole thing and start over. Honestly, like the I don't
Yeah.
know what they're planning for next season, but I think with the recent surge of comments from the skaters not really saying they like it very much, they better go back to something like
Bring
a
back the
team that
compulsory patterns. Give you that direct team to team comparison.
yeah, even then though it's
Like
going to be very difficult to tell. I mean,
mhm,
what ideally I would like is I've seen from like the 98 Olympics or Japan had this high definition TV way back then, like they
mhm.
had the cameras for it, and now there's people that will put together side by sides of like all five teams, and they use the same camera angles going around these corners because the producers knew just like this is what angle we're going to use for, so you literally get like a head-to-head basis. Now that's not, obviously you'd have to put that together after the fact if they would go back to that in competition, but at least you could really see where like, oh, this skater's better, this skater's not. But yeah, they need to go back to the origins and they need to stray away far away from where they're at now because there are no programs. The programs are literally, you have a skater competing in the Grand Prix that says there's no time for the program because we're just focused on this choreographic element, and that is the basis of all of the scores that you're getting
Yep.
essentially. It's
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like it's just too much.
Yep.
You're not really getting anything like that. And even then with like the 90s, you're not even getting like a direct theme comparison. Because
No.
before it was like, oh, we're all doing like a Viennese waltz. Whose waltz is better?
We're all
Now
gonna
it's
skate
just
to the
like,
Blue Danube, but
right, right. Now whose vibes are better, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. I'd be okay with they never bring back marches for
yeah,
the
mm,
for the rhythm dances. Yeah, those got Straussed way too much.
yeah.
But then yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Get rid of the choreographic elements, especially in the rhythm dance. If you're gonna keep one in the free dance. One. Get rid
But
of the
why?
choreographic step. Even if
Because
it's
you're still,
non-scored.
but yeah,
If
that's
it's
what I was gonna say
non-scored,
though.
I'm
If you
okay.
have a scored
Yeah.
element, you're gonna go back to this was the highlight of the program. This is where I'm basing my PCSI just
Mhm.
from this one element
But
because
even
that's
then, like now too, the GOE they've given these choreographic elements, it's 4.15 points you can get per in the free dance, and it's 7.5 in the rhythm dance.
hmm
That's ridiculous. Seven and a
hmm
half points of GOE. Like I think before when it was finally they started scoring it, it was like 2 points, right? Like
Hmm.
2.1 points you could get.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
okay, maybe. Sure,
Hmm.
right? If you're gonna have one choreographic element and the GOE ultimately that you can get forward is fairly low, it's just there to enhance the program in
Yeah.
some way. That made
Yeah.
sense.
But
Now it's
they're
making or breaking placements, and that's absurd. Absolutely absurd. That
they're
especially in the
they're
rhythm dance.
they're trying to cater to like what they think fans want. They really are. And nobody likes it. I mean,
Nobody does, right? And you think about all these viral moments. I have never seen a choreographic step go viral. Sorry, no. It doesn't show up on my random Facebook feed. It's like you can't. I keep feeling like the ice dance technical committee is trying to make fetch happen, and it's not going
yeah.
to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. Sorry. Like
Yeah.
all these things that come across, it's always this je ne sais quoi. Like no one truly knows sometimes what's going to
Hmm.
get like the general audience and what's going to make them share
Yeah.
stuff. And it's stuff like James and Cypre's Sound of Silence program. People were asking me about that, right? Like, hey, you watch figure skating. Have you seen this? And I'm like, yes, I've
Yeah.
seen it a lot.
Yeah.
Like, but those are the type of things that truly grab people. It's
It has to be organic. It can't be
mhm,
forced with all these rules and
exactly.
these forced kind of
Even
order of elements. And I don't know.
mhm. Even the last Olympics, I think about what my friends asked me about, and it was literally like, oh, they talked about the clear love-hate relationship from Hubble and Donahue, how that when they performed, they had those vibes, and you could
Hmm.
feel that. They loved the way that, like in 2018, all the passion, like whatever the crazy stuff that Virtue and Moi were doing, and then the one lift that not going to say it here.
Hmm.
But those are the things they were talking about, right? And it wasn't these things that, again, the Ice Dance Technical Committee is trying to make happen.
Hmm.
Anyway,
So the
so many
second part
rants.
of this question was, how can judging avoid carrying current scoring controversies into the Olympics? I started this video by saying I think they've opened the door for now every single person
Yeah,
to
I think it's too
angle
late.
it. Yeah, they're going to angle it now, whatever happens, that their team was screwed out of
Hmm.
something.
And
And
ultimately, it's because they've built in too much plausible deniability into ice dance scoring, in my opinion, right? Because choreographic elements, those are going to make and break the medals and the competitions for the most part, right? And
Mhm,
you really can't sit there and say like, oh, this definitely deserved a +5, this definitely deserved a +3,
mhm,
right? And then you might have teams get random exclamations, and let's say you have an exclamation in the rhythm dance, well, that's going to take away 3 points at least, and that's
mhm.
again can make or break gold to off the podium. So it's
No,
I know it's impossible. I agree with that. I don't you can avoid it. It's just gonna be controversial, especially when we've already seen what's been happening in the Grand Prix season.
no. I
Mhm.
I I know where this is setting up for. Um, One thing we didn't mention, and I know there was a question somewhere that I just want to go over really quick along these lines.
Oh,
Um, so there was a comment about how I mentioned that Sean or no US technical panelists could be on the Olympic panel, and someone wondered why. I know there was a question somewhere about it.
okay. It may have been in the video and not like in the Q&A we
Oh yeah, yeah, it might have been that. But so basically, if you're a top five ranked team or skater, as far as country wise go, then you cannot have a technical panelist be in the event, something like the Olympics or
right. So
Worlds.
like, for
So
ice dance it'd be like US, Canada, Italy. They can't have one of their technical specialists on the technical committee at the Olympics.
mhm,
Yeah, right.
yeah, and then a
Is
little
France
further down
considered
too.
top five right now?
That's what
Is
I'm
Lopez and
considering.
Brissot top five?
No, they won't be
Oh, okay,
because
okay.
Spain would
Because
be
in
Spain
Britain.
and Britain. Yeah, so
So
France, I
France could
think
be on the
could.
technical. I
Could.
They should avoid it though, I hope.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have Alec plus who, right?
Hungary. Yeah, you'll have Hungary
Yeah.
and like I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Apparently the panel has already been a panel at some point this year. I would assume they have already tested them out. So
Oh,
I guess we
okay.
could go through and try to figure out who would fit that criteria. But yeah, there will be no Sean Rustad. There will be no US technical panelists come the Olympics or Worlds. So
Mhm.
I think we answered most of the questions. Some of the other questions are just very, very in
Yeah.
depth about technique and stuff like that. We'll get
And
into all
yeah.
that stuff. But oh, and also I don't know if you guys know this. Thomas had a separate YouTube channel a few years ago
Oh
called The
yeah.
Technical Panel, and he actually did this for all of the required elements at the time, he went through and he made slow-mo videos showing what everything is required. We will link to those as well. That can help you guys out a lot because it also mentions all of these turns, the foot that they're on, if they're going forward, if they're going backwards, inside, outside, all this stuff. So I will link to all of those as well. They are super, super
Hmm.
helpful. I know that they were
Yeah,
a
and they're a
big
little
hit.
outdated though because the rules change every
Yeah,
year, right? So you'd
yeah,
have to do
yeah,
that, and
yeah.
then yeah, I would love to do
But at
that
least
if
it gives like a
I had
basis, you know,
yeah.
it gives people somewhere to start. This is you know, we have work schedules and travel schedules that we're working around here, so we don't have endless amounts of time, but we try to put up something, you know, at least every week. And then next week we have, of course, the Grand Prix Final, which is going to be a big thing. It's basically the last time that all the top teams are going to be together before the Olympics, so we'll have that to talk about. So yeah,
Hmm.
I hope that we answered most of the questions. I don't have anything else to really to say except don't take things out on the skaters when it's the judges and the technical panel that are doing it.
Right.
So
Yeah, because they're
behave, be
again,
an
they're
adult.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah, because they're all working really hard. They really are. I think we should all respect that. And again, it's really not up to them. What's happening that we all find controversial, that we'll sit here and debate, is all because the adults around the skaters, not necessarily
yeah,
because of the skaters themselves. And so, again, to quote me girls again, they're just victims in all of this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I got nothing else. This is hopefully hopeful to a lot of you. There's going to be a lot of links in the description of the video.
Mhm.
As always, we have linked our personal Instagram accounts. If you want to message us there, feel
Oh, do we
free.
want to thank the person now, or do we want
Yes,
to
and
thank
that's what, yeah.
them
I
later?
wanted to
Yes.
mention Annabelle, one of our subscribers, sent a very, very generous donation to us last night. It's so appreciated. Um, of course, we don't expect anything from doing this because we're just two people talking about something that we love to talk about, but it is
I know,
I
right?
messaged him right away and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So very, very appreciative of that.
Yes, thank you.
And of course, if you also want to donate, there's a link. If you go to the info for the skating session on YouTube, there's a link to PayPal where you can also donate. And yeah, other than that, like always, if you're not subscribing yet, please do because it helps us out a lot. It gives us visibility. And then yeah, share the video on social media. Tell us what we got wrong. As always, I'll start as I always do. I'll start a little comment that has all the corrections that we have for this video. And of course, we love hearing from you. We will always try to reply to every last person. That's what we've done from the beginning. So that is all I have. Anything else from you?
No, that's it.
All right, we have a week. Happy times for Grand Prix Final, one of the most exciting events of the year. But for now, my name is Tony Wheeler.
And I'm Thomas Vu.
Thank you for watching Skating Session.
All right, bye everyone.